The world does not need to defeat you. It only needs to keep you distracted long enough for you to abandon yourself. Not all at once, not in some dramatic collapse, not in a single moment where everything falls apart. It happens quietly. One notification, one impulse, one excuse, one more video, one more scroll, one more promise to start tomorrow. And slowly, without noticing, you stop living from intention and start living from reaction. You still have dreams. You still have goals. You still know what you should be doing. That is what makes it worse. Because the pain is not ignorance. The pain is knowing exactly what matters and watching yourself choose what does not. You tell yourself you are tired. You tell yourself you are overwhelmed. You tell yourself you just need a break. But deep down, you know the truth. You are not just resting. You are escaping. You are escaping the pressure of becoming the person you said you wanted to be. You are escaping the silence where your unfinished work speaks louder than your excuses. You are escaping the discomfort of focus, because focus forces you to face the gap between your standards and your behavior. And that gap is where most people lose the war within. They do not lose because they are weak by nature. They lose because they keep negotiating with weakness until weakness becomes familiar. They keep giving their attention to everything that asks for it, then wonder why they have no energy left for the life they claim to want. Your attention is not a small thing. It is the door to your discipline. It is the beginning of self-respect. It is the place where your future is either protected or slowly traded away. A distracted mind cannot build a focused life. A scattered identity cannot create a disciplined future. A person who is available to every impulse cannot become someone who commands himself under pressure. This video is not about productivity hacks. It is not about organizing your apps, buying a better planner, or pretending that one perfect routine will rescue you. No one is coming to rescue your attention. No one is coming to organize your mind. No one is coming to pull you away from the distractions you keep choosing. If your mind is going to become yours again, you will have to take it back. And the first thing you need to understand is this. Before life takes your confidence, your discipline, your direction, or your self-respect, it takes your attention. Your attention is the first thing life takes from a weak mind. Before you lose discipline, you lose attention. Before you lose confidence, you lose attention. Before you lose control of your day, your emotions, your habits, and your direction, something smaller happens first. Your mind gets pulled away from what matters. And because it feels small, you underestimate it. You think checking your phone is harmless. You think switching between tasks is normal. You think letting every thought interrupt you is just part of being busy. But every time your attention is taken from you, your life becomes less available to your own command. That is the part most people do not want to face. A distracted person does not need to be destroyed by failure. He can be neutralized by noise. He can have potential, intelligence, ambition, and good intentions. But if his attention belongs to everything except his mission, none of it becomes real. Attention is where execution begins. You cannot build what you cannot stay with. You cannot master what you keep abandoning. You cannot become disciplined while allowing your mind to be dragged around by every impulse, mood, notification, worry, and random craving that appears. This is why focus is not just a productivity skill. It is a test of ownership, because the question is not only, can you concentrate? The real question is, who owns your mind when pressure arrives? If the world can redirect you anytime it wants, then your plans are not plans. They are wishes waiting to be interrupted. If your emotions can pull you away every time discomfort appears, then your goals are not goals. They are ideas you enjoy until they demand something from you. And if your impulses can command you faster than your standards can guide you, then the weaker version of you is not just present. It is leading. This is where the war within begins. Not when life becomes difficult, not when the challenge becomes massive, but in the quiet moment when your attention is asked for, and you decide whether to protect it or surrender it. Most people lose that moment so often they stop noticing the loss. They call it distraction, but it is deeper than that. Sometimes distraction is not the problem itself. Sometimes distraction is the cover story for something the mind is trying not to face. Distraction is not always noise. Sometimes it is a refusal to face yourself. That is why removing the phone is not always enough. You can delete the apps, you can turn off notifications, you can clean your desk, block websites, set timers, and create the perfect environment. And still, the moment silence arrives, your mind will search for another exit. Because the deepest distraction is not outside of you. It is the part of you that does not want to sit alone with what you already know. You know the work you have been avoiding. You know the promise you keep delaying. You know the area of your life where you have been lying to yourself. Not loudly, not publicly, but quietly enough to keep functioning while still betraying your own standards. And when silence exposes that gap, the weaker self panics. It reaches for stimulation. It reaches for noise. It reaches for anything that can interrupt the moment where you might have to admit, I am not confused. I am avoiding. That sentence is painful because it removes the comfort of pretending. Most people do not want clarity. They say they do, but what they really want is a softer explanation for why they are not doing what they said mattered. They want a reason that does not demand responsibility. They want to blame the world, the algorithm, the pressure, the schedule, the stress, the lack of motivation, and some of those things are real. The world is distracting, the pressure is real, the noise is constant. Your mind is being pulled in more directions than ever before. But if you are honest, not every distraction found you. Some distractions were invited. Some distractions were chosen because focus would have forced you to confront what your excuses were protecting. This is why so many people feel busy but not productive, tired but not fulfilled, stimulated but not satisfied. Their mind is constantly occupied, but their life is not moving in the direction they claim to care about. They are not resting. They are hiding inside activity. There is a difference between recovery and escape. Recovery restores you so you can return stronger. Escape numbs you so you do not have to return at all. And if you confuse the two long enough, your life starts shrinking. Not because you cannot do hard things, but because your mind has learned to run every time hard things reveal who you are becoming. This is the part that requires emotional honesty. You cannot rebuild focus if you are still using distraction as anesthesia. You cannot protect your attention if part of you wants it stolen. You cannot win the war within while secretly depending on noise to avoid the battlefield. The Stoics understood that a person who cannot sit with himself cannot command himself. Not because silence is mystical, but because silence removes the excuses. It reveals the raw condition of the mind. It shows you what you serve when nothing else is speaking, and for many people that is the real fear. They are not afraid of focus. They are afraid of what focus will reveal. Focus reveals whether your goals are real or decorative. It reveals whether your standards are lived or only admired. It reveals whether your ambition has discipline behind it or only emotion. That is why the distracted mind always looks innocent at first. It says, I just need a break. But beneath that sentence, something else may be happening. I do not want to face the version of myself I keep becoming. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it. Because the problem is no longer only that you get distracted. The problem is that somewhere inside, you keep giving yourself permission to leave what matters. The problem is not that you get distracted. The problem is that you keep giving yourself permission. That is the part that turns a moment into a pattern. Everyone loses focus sometimes. Everyone has moments where the mind wanders, the energy drops, the body feels heavy, and the easier options start speaking louder than the right one. That is human. But what destroys you is not the first interruption. It is the private agreement you make with it. Just 5 minutes. I will start after this. I deserve to relax first. I can still fix it later. Today is already ruined anyway. These sentences sound harmless because they are quiet. No one else hears them. No one sees the negotiation happening inside your mind. But those small permissions are not small. They are the legal documents your weaker self uses to take control of your life. You do not usually fail by making one massive decision to destroy your future. You fail by approving one small surrender at a time. And the dangerous part is that each surrender teaches your mind something. It teaches your mind that your standards are flexible when discomfort arrives. It teaches your mind that your promises depend on mood. It teaches your mind that your goals are important only when they feel convenient. So the next time pressure appears, your weaker self already knows the door is open. This is why you can know exactly what you need to do and still not do it. Because knowledge is not command. Intention is not discipline. Wanting a better life does not mean you have stopped obeying the patterns that keep you from building it. A focused life is not built by waiting for distraction to disappear. It is built when you stop giving distraction permission to win. There has to be a moment where you stop treating your excuses like reasonable explanations and start seeing them as instructions from a version of you that cannot be allowed to lead. Not hated, not denied, not dramatized, trained. Because every time you say yes to the escape, you are not just avoiding a task. You are reinforcing an identity. And that is where the next battle begins. Every impulse you obey becomes a vote for who you are becoming. This is why focus cannot be separated from identity. You think you are choosing between working and scrolling, between discipline and comfort, between staying with the task and walking away for a moment. But beneath the surface, something deeper is being built. A person. Every time you obey the impulse to escape, you strengthen the identity of someone who leaves when things become uncomfortable. Every time you stay, even when your mind wants relief, You strengthen the identity of someone who can be trusted under pressure. That is the hidden cost of distraction. It does not only steal time, it trains you to become someone who cannot remain loyal to his own direction. And this is where most people misunderstand change. They think transformation begins when they feel different, when they are more motivated, when they wake up with confidence, when life becomes lighter. But identity is not rebuilt by waiting for a new feeling. Identity is rebuilt by repeated evidence. You become focused by proving again and again that your attention follows your standards, not your impulses. You become disciplined by proving again and again that discomfort does not have the authority to make your decisions. You become stronger by proving again and again that the weaker self can speak without being obeyed. That distinction matters. You will still feel the pull. You will still feel boredom, resistance, anxiety, frustration, and the desire to escape. The goal is not to become a machine that feels nothing. The goal is to become a person who does not confuse every feeling with a command. A mature mind does not silence every impulse. It puts every impulse in its place. This is self-command. Not perfection, not constant intensity, not fake toughness. Self-command is the ability to hear the weaker voice inside you and still choose the action that protects your future. Because every small decision is teaching your mind who is in charge. And if you keep voting for escape, do not be surprised when escape becomes your identity. But if you begin voting for discipline, even in small moments, something changes. You stop seeing focus as a task. You start seeing it as proof that the stronger version of you is still alive. And once you understand that your mind has been trained by what you repeatedly obey, the next truth becomes unavoidable. Your mind is not broken. It has been trained to seek escape. Because if you believe your mind is broken, you will start treating your weakness like a permanent identity. You will say, "This is just how I am." You will hide behind the personality you never disciplined. You will turn your lack of focus into a label and call it honesty. But most of what you call just me is training. You trained your mind every time you rewarded discomfort with escape. You trained your attention every time boredom appeared and you reached for stimulation. You trained your emotions every time pressure arrived and you gave them the authority to decide what happens next. Not because you are hopeless, because repetition builds loyalty. Your mind becomes loyal to what you repeatedly feed it. If you feed it constant noise, silence will feel threatening. If you feed it instant relief, effort will feel unfair. If you feed it easy dopamine, deep work will feel like punishment. If you feed it excuses, responsibility will feel like an attack. This is not a moral failure, but it is your responsibility. That is the line most people refuse to hold. They want compassion without ownership. They want to be understood without being challenged. They want someone to say, "It is not your fault," so they never have to ask, "What am I going to do about it now?" You can acknowledge how your mind got here without surrendering your future to it. Yes, the world is engineered to fragment you. Yes, your attention has been targeted. Yes, your impulses have been studied, triggered, and monetized. But if you stop there, you become a victim of the design. And Forge Minds does not exist to help you explain your defeat. It exists to help you train your command. The same mind that learned escape can learn endurance. The same attention that became scattered can become sharp again. The same person who kept leaving the battlefield can learn to stay, but not by waiting to feel ready, by creating new evidence. One resisted impulse, one protected hour, one completed promise, one moment where you feel the urge to run, and instead of obeying it, you breathe, stay, and continue. That is how the mind is rebuilt, not through fantasy, through repetition under pressure. And once you understand that your attention has been trained, you begin to see the world differently. You start noticing how often stimulation is sold to you as freedom. The world sells you stimulation and calls it freedom. That is the deception. You are told that having more options means you are more free, more content, more access, more opinions, more entertainment, more things to click, watch, buy, follow, react to, and compare yourself against. But freedom is not the ability to choose from endless distractions. Freedom is the ability to choose what matters and stay with it. Most people do not understand that difference. They think they are making choices because their hand is the one touching the screen, but a person can be surrounded by options and still be controlled. A person can have unlimited access and still have no command. A person can live in constant stimulation and still feel empty, anxious, and directionless. Because stimulation gives you movement without progress. It makes you feel active while keeping you unfocused. It gives your mind something to consume so you do not have to create, confront, decide, or build. And the more you depend on it, the more silence starts to feel like a threat. You call it entertainment. But sometimes it is training. It trains you to need novelty before effort. It trains you to need reward before discipline. It trains you to abandon depth the moment something easier becomes available. And the world is more than willing to feed that weakness. Not because it hates you, because your scattered attention is profitable. A focused person is difficult to control. A focused person is harder to manipulate, harder to emotionally hijack, harder to sell empty promises to, and harder to pull away from his own direction. But a distracted person is open territory. He reacts before he reflects. He consumes before he creates. He compares before he builds. He lets the world define what deserves urgency, then wonders why his own life feels delayed. This is why mental sovereignty matters. If you do not decide what deserves your attention, something else will decide for you. Your phone will decide, your impulses will decide, your anxiety will decide, other people's opinions will decide, the loudest thing in the room will decide. And the loudest thing is rarely the most important. The world will not beg you to waste your life. It will make wasting your life feel normal, convenient, and even deserved. That is why you have to stop confusing access with freedom. You do not become free by being available to everything. You become free by learning what to refuse. And one of the first things you must refuse is the belief that your feelings are qualified to lead your day. The world sells you stimulation and calls it freedom. That is the deception. You are told that having more options means you are more free, more content, more access, more opinions, more entertainment, more things to click, watch, buy, follow, react to, and compare yourself against. But freedom is not the ability to choose from endless distractions. Freedom is the ability to choose what matters and stay with it. Most people do not understand that difference. They think they are making choices because their hand is the one touching the screen, but a person can be surrounded by options and still be controlled. A person can have unlimited access and still have no command. A person can live in constant stimulation and still feel empty, anxious, and directionless. Because stimulation gives you movement without progress. It makes you feel active while keeping you unfocused. It gives your mind something to consume so you do not have to create, confront, decide, or build. And the more you depend on it, the more silence starts to feel like a threat. You call it entertainment. But sometimes it is training. It trains you to need novelty before effort. It trains you to need reward before discipline. It trains you to abandon depth the moment something easier becomes available. And the world is more than willing to feed that weakness. Not because it hates you, because your scattered attention is profitable. A focused person is difficult to control. A focused person is harder to manipulate, harder to emotionally hijack, harder to sell empty promises to, and harder to pull away from his own direction. But a distracted person is open territory. He reacts before he reflects. He consumes before he creates. He compares before he builds. He lets the world define what deserves urgency, then wonders why his own life feels delayed. This is why mental sovereignty matters. If you do not decide what deserves your attention, something else will decide for you. Your phone will decide, your impulses will decide, your anxiety will decide, other people's opinions will decide, the loudest thing in the room will decide. And the loudest thing is rarely the most important. The world will not beg you to waste your life. It will make wasting your life feel normal, convenient, and even deserved. That is why you have to stop confusing access with freedom. You do not become free by being available to everything. You become free by learning what to refuse. And one of the first things you must refuse is the belief that your feelings are qualified to lead your day. You do not need a perfect plan. You need a single front to fight on. A distracted person often hides behind complexity. Too many goals, too many ideas, too many tabs open in the mind, too many versions of the future competing for attention. One part wants discipline, another wants comfort. One part wants money, another wants peace. One part wants transformation, another wants the old habits with better results. And because everything feels important, nothing receives command. This is how scattered ambition becomes another form of distraction. It looks productive from the outside. You are thinking, planning, researching, comparing options, imagining strategies, rebuilding your routine again, searching for the perfect system that will finally make your life click into place. But sometimes planning is just procrastination wearing a responsible mask. Sometimes you are not preparing. You are avoiding the discomfort of choosing because choice creates pressure. Once you choose one front, you lose the comfort of hiding behind endless possibility. You can no longer say, I could do anything. You have to say, this is the thing I will protect, practice, and finish. That is where seriousness begins. Sun Tzu understood that strength becomes dangerous when it is concentrated. A scattered force can be large and still ineffective. A concentrated force can be smaller and still break through. The same is true inside your mind. You do not need more mental energy if all of it is leaking in different directions. You need a point of attack. One front, one battle that matters today, one task that proves you are no longer available to every impulse that wants to divide you. This does not mean your life only has one responsibility. You may have work, family, health, finances, relationships, and pressure coming from every direction. But focus begins when you stop treating everything as equally urgent. A serious mind knows how to rank the battlefield. What is the one thing that, if protected today, would make you respect yourself tonight? What is the one action you keep avoiding because it would expose whether you are serious? What is the one promise that would start rebuilding trust with yourself if you actually completed it? Start there, not with the fantasy version of your life, not with the 10-year plan you use to feel inspired while avoiding the next hour. Start with the front directly in front of you. The weaker self loves vague ambition because vague ambition never has to bleed. It never has to sit down, shut out the noise, and finish what it started. But a single front removes the hiding place. It gives your attention an assignment, and once your attention has an assignment, the next enemy appears clearly. Boredom. Because once the noise is gone and the battle is chosen, the weaker self starts panicking in the silence. Boredom is where the weaker self starts panicking. Not failure, not pressure, not pain. Boredom. Because boredom strips away the illusion that you are unable. It shows you something more uncomfortable. You are capable, but you are not always willing to stay when the work stops entertaining you. That is why so many people confuse lack of stimulation with lack of purpose. They begin something with intensity, a goal, a project, a new routine, a new identity. For a few days, everything feels alive because the idea is fresh. The mind is rewarded by novelty. The future feels close. The emotion is strong. Then the excitement fades. The task becomes ordinary. The work becomes repetitive. The progress becomes slower than the fantasy. And suddenly, the weaker self starts looking for a way out. It says, maybe this is not for me. It says, maybe I need a better plan. It says, maybe I should wait until I feel inspired again. But often, nothing is wrong. You have simply reached the part of the process where your identity is tested, without applause. This is where most people leave. Not because the path failed them, but because the path stopped feeding their need for stimulation. Boredom is dangerous to the weaker self because it forces direct contact with reality. No drama, no emotional high, no audience, no immediate reward. Just you, the work, and the question you keep trying to avoid. Can you stay when nothing exciting is happening? That question matters because depth requires repetition, skill requires repetition, discipline requires repetition, self-respect requires repetition. You do not become dangerous to your excuses by doing what feels intense for 3 days. You become dangerous by returning to what matters after the feeling disappears. The weaker self wants every meaningful action to feel rewarding before it is completed. But serious growth often feels unrewarding while it is happening. It feels quiet, slow, heavy, unseen, and that is exactly why it changes you. Because when you stay with the work while your mind is begging for stimulation, you are training something deeper than focus. You are training loyalty to your own direction. This is where mental sovereignty becomes real, not when you are inspired. When you are bored, restless, tempted, and still choose command. But there's another truth you need to face. You cannot keep placing yourself inside environments designed to weaken you and then blame willpower when you lose. Protect your environment before you blame your willpower. A serious person does not build a battlefield that favors his weakest self and then act surprised when he loses. Look at the places where you keep failing. The phone is beside you, the tabs are open, the notifications are alive, the entertainment is one movement away, the people who drain you have unlimited access to you. The habits that weaken you are easier to reach than the habits that build you. And then you say, I just need more discipline. No, sometimes you need less arrogance. Because arrogance is believing you can surround yourself with temptation, friction, noise, comfort, and endless stimulation, and still expect your strongest self to win through willpower alone. That is not discipline. That is poor strategy. The mind is not separate from the environment it lives inside. What you see shapes what you desire. What is easy shapes what you repeat. What is near shapes what you choose when your energy is low. And your energy will be low sometimes. That is not weakness. That is reality. So if your system only works when you feel strong, it is not a system. It is a fantasy. You need to design your life for the moments when the weaker self is active, when you are tired, when you are bored, when you are stressed, when the task feels heavy, when the old pattern starts whispering that one small escape will not matter. Because that is when your environment either protects you or betrays you. Put distance between yourself and what repeatedly defeats you, not because you are fragile, because you are responsible. Remove access where access keeps becoming surrender. Make the wrong action slower, make the right action easier. Put your tools in front of you before the work begins. Decide where your phone sleeps. Decide what websites are unavailable during work. Decide what noise does not get to enter your mind before your priorities do. This is not weakness, this is command. A disciplined person does not pretend temptation is harmless. He studies the battlefield and removes unnecessary losses before they happen. You do not rise to the level of your intentions when pressure arrives. You usually fall to the strength of your environment, your habits, and your defaults. So, change the defaults. If distraction is the easiest thing available, do not be shocked when your mind chooses it. If focus requires more effort than escape, you have already made weakness convenient. And that is the part you must stop allowing. Because focus is not only something you feel inside, it is something you protect outside. You protect it with boundaries, you protect it with silence, you protect it with friction. You protect it by refusing to give your weakest impulses a direct path to your attention. The world will keep trying to enter your mind. Your job is to stop leaving the door open. And when you finally create an environment where your attention can stay with what matters, something deeper begins to return. Not just productivity, self-respect. Deep work is not productivity, it is self-respect in action. That is what most people miss. They think focus is about getting more done, finishing more tasks, managing time better, producing more output. And yes, focus can do all of that. But the deeper value of focus is not what it produces outside of you. It is what it rebuilds inside of you. Every time you sit down and give full attention to what matters, you are sending a message to your own mind. My word still means something. I can be trusted with pressure. I do not need perfect conditions to do what must be done. That message matters because many people are not only tired from distraction, they are tired from not trusting themselves anymore. They have broken too many promises in private. They have started too many things and abandoned them. They have said, "This time will be different," then watch the same pattern return. And after a while, the pain is no longer just the unfinished task. The pain is the quiet loss of self-respect. You stop believing yourself. You make plans, but part of you already expects failure. You set goals, but part of you already knows the excuse will arrive. You try to start again, but your own history stands in the room like evidence against you. This is why deep work matters. It gives you a way to rebuild evidence, not through speeches, not through self-hatred, not through pretending the past did not happen, through action. One focused hour becomes proof. One completed promise becomes proof. One moment of staying when you wanted to leave becomes proof. And proof is what rebuilds identity. James Clear often speaks about habits as votes for the type of person you become. The principle is simple but brutal. You do not think your way into a new identity, you prove your way into it. Focus is one of the cleanest forms of proof, because focus cannot be faked for long. When the door is closed, when the screen is clear, when the noise is gone, when no one is watching, you meet the truth of your command. Can you stay? Can you finish? Can you keep your attention where your future needs it? That is why deep work is self-respect in action. It is not glamorous, it is not loud, it will not always feel inspiring, but it restores something the distracted life slowly takes from you. The belief that you are still capable of obeying your highest standard, and that belief is not rebuilt when things feel easy. It is rebuilt at the exact moment you want to escape. The moment you want to escape is the moment that trains you, not the moment when you feel clear, not the moment when the task feels easy, not the first few minutes when your intention is still fresh and your mind still believes it is in control. The real training begins when resistance arrives, when the work becomes heavy, when the progress feels invisible, when your body wants to move away, when your attention starts searching for a door, when the phone suddenly feels important, when your mind begins building a case for why leaving the task would be reasonable. That is the moment. That is where focus is either built or broken. Most people think the urge to escape means something is wrong. They think resistance means they are not ready. They think boredom means the task is not meaningful. They think discomfort means they should stop, reset, wait, or find an easier way. But discomfort is not always a warning. Sometimes, discomfort is the exact place where the weaker self is being exposed. You do not train focus by avoiding that moment. You train focus by staying inside it long enough to prove that discomfort does not own you. There's a difference between pain that damages you and discomfort that develops you. A mature mind learns the difference. When you are exhausted, you may need recovery. When your body is breaking down, you may need rest. When your mind is overloaded, you may need order. But when you are simply uncomfortable because the work demands attention, patience, and discipline, leaving is not wisdom. It is surrender dressed as self-care, and this is where the weaker self becomes persuasive. It will not always sound weak. Sometimes it will sound reasonable. It will say, "You have done enough." It will say, "You can finish this later." It will say, "You need a break before you can do this properly." It will say, "There's no point forcing it." Some of that may be true sometimes, but if that voice always appears at the exact moment you are about to grow, you need to stop calling it guidance. You need to call it what it is, a pattern. And patterns do not disappear because you understand them. They disappear when you stop feeding them. So the next time the urge to escape appears, do not panic. Do not dramatize it. Do not make it mean you are broken. Look at it directly and say, "This is the rep. This is the repetition that trains command. This is the moment where I teach my mind that resistance can speak without being obeyed. This is where I stop negotiating." Focus is not built before the battle. It is built inside the moment you usually abandon. And if you can stay there for one more breath, one more sentence, one more page, one more set, one more honest attempt, you begin to create a new relationship with pressure. You stop seeing pressure as the signal to escape. You start seeing it as the signal to take command. And once you understand that, the path becomes simpler. You do not need to control the entire day. You need to win the next honest hour. Stop trying to control the whole day. Win the next honest hour. This is where focus becomes practical, not easy. Practical, because when your life feels scattered, your instinct is to make a massive promise. You want to fix everything at once. The routine, the sleep, the work, the health, the mindset, the future, the identity, the entire broken system. But that kind of pressure often becomes another excuse to do nothing. The mind looks at the size of the mountain and says, "I cannot change all of this today." And it is right. You cannot rebuild your entire life in one day, but you can stop lying for 1 hour. You can stop escaping for 1 hour. You can stop feeding the weaker self for 1 hour. That is the difference between fantasy and command. Fantasy needs a perfect transformation. Command needs the next honest action. Most people fail because they keep trying to win an imaginary version of the future while losing the real moment in front of them. They think about the person they want to become, but they do not protect the next hour that would move them toward that person. So make it smaller, make it sharper, make it undeniable. For the next hour, one task gets your full attention. Not 10 goals, not a new life plan, not a performance for anyone else to admire. One honest hour where you do what you said mattered without negotiating with the part of you that wants to leave. 1 hour where the phone does not own you. 1 hour where your emotions are allowed to exist, but not allowed to lead. 1 hour where boredom is not an emergency. 1 hour where discomfort does not become permission to quit. This is how you begin taking your mind back. Not by promising never to be distracted again. That is childish. You will be distracted again. You will feel resistance again. You will want escape again. The victory is not that the weaker self disappears. The victory is that it stops getting automatic authority. When you win one honest hour, you create evidence. When you create evidence, you rebuild trust. When you rebuild trust, your identity begins to shift from someone who keeps planning to someone who keeps proving. And once you experience even 1 hour of real command, you start to understand what has been missing. It was never more noise. It was not more motivation. It was not a better excuse. It was the willingness to become unavailable to what keeps making you weaker, become unavailable to what is making you weaker. Not angry, not bitter, not isolated from life, unavailable. There is a difference. You do not need to hate the world to protect your mind from it. You do not need to disappear from everyone to become focused. You do not need to turn discipline into punishment or treat every pleasure like an enemy. But you do need to become honest about what keeps pulling you away from the person you are trying to build. Some things do not deserve easy access to you anymore. Some conversations only feed confusion. Some environments only strengthen the old version of you. Some habits only reopen the door to patterns you already know will cost you self-respect. Some distractions do not look dangerous because they do not destroy you immediately. They weaken you slowly. That is why they are so effective. They do not take your life in one dramatic moment. They take your edge, your clarity, your standards, your urgency, your ability to sit with discomfort and finish what matters. And because the damage is gradual, you keep calling it normal. You say it is just how people live now. You say everyone is distracted. You say, I need to stay connected. But connected to what? Connected to the noise that keeps fragmenting your mind? Connected to the impulses that keep weakening your discipline? Connected to opinions, comparisons, and stimulation that leave you more restless than before? You have to be careful with what you normalize, because what you normalize, you eventually stop resisting. And what you stop resisting, you eventually become. Mental sovereignty begins when you stop giving unrestricted access to everything that knows how to weaken you. It begins when you decide that your attention is not public property, your mind is not an open door, your future is not available for every impulse, emotion, notification, craving, and distraction to negotiate with. This is not about becoming unreachable to people who matter. It is about becoming unreachable to patterns that keep making you smaller, unavailable to pointless noise when your work requires depth, unavailable to emotional chaos when your standards require calm, unavailable to cheap stimulation when your future requires sacrifice, unavailable to the weaker self when it tries to drag you back into the identity you are trying to outgrow. That is what focus looks like when it matures. It stops being a technique and becomes a boundary, a line inside you, a quiet refusal, not today, not this hour, not this version of me anymore, because the world will keep asking for your attention. It will not stop. It will not become quieter because you have a dream. It will not respect your goals because you wrote them down. It will not protect your mind because you feel overwhelmed. So you must decide what no longer gets access. You must decide what does not get to shape your thoughts before you have shaped your day. You must decide what does not get to interrupt the work that is rebuilding your self-respect. And when you begin making those decisions consistently, something powerful happens. You stop feeling like a person trying to focus. You start becoming a person who cannot be easily pulled away from himself. That is the beginning of command. And it leads to the final truth this entire video has been moving toward. No one is coming to protect your mind for you. No one is coming to protect your mind for you. That sentence is not meant to discourage you. It is meant to wake you up. Because as long as you believe someone else is supposed to protect your attention, organize your thoughts, discipline your impulses, remove your temptations, calm your emotions, and force you to become who you said you wanted to be, you will keep waiting in the middle of your own life. And waiting will look reasonable. You will wait for motivation. You will wait for clarity. You will wait for the right season. You will wait for the pressure to calm down. You will wait for the world to become less distracting before you become more disciplined. But the world is not going to become quieter for you. The noise will not apologize. The distractions will not step aside. Your impulses will not surrender because your goals are meaningful. Your weaker self will not stop speaking because you are tired of listening. This battle does not end because you understand it. It changes when you take command. That is the hard truth. Your attention is your responsibility. Not because the world is innocent. It is not. The world is engineered to fragment you, stimulate you, provoke you, and keep you reacting. But if you use that truth as an excuse to stay divided, you have turned awareness into surrender. You do not control every force that reaches for your mind, but you are responsible for what you continue to allow. You are responsible for the door you keep leaving open. You are responsible for the distractions you keep calling harmless. You are responsible for the excuses you keep treating like wisdom. You are responsible for the version of yourself you keep feeding when no one is watching. And that responsibility is not a punishment. It is the way back to power. Because if distraction was only something happening to you, then you would be helpless. But if part of it is something you keep permitting, then there is still a place inside you where the battle can be won. That place is command, not control over everything. Command over the next choice. Command over the next hour. Command over the moment your mind wants to escape and you decide to stay. That is where your life starts changing. Not in some dramatic scene where you become a different person overnight. Not in a perfect morning routine that saves you from discomfort. Not in a sudden wave of motivation that makes discipline easy. It changes in the quiet, private moment when you stop negotiating with the weaker version of yourself. When you close the door. When you remove the noise. When you sit with the work. When you feel resistance rise inside you and refuse to treat it like a command. That is focus. Not a trick. Not a hack. Not a productivity aesthetic. Focus is a declaration that your mind is no longer public property. It is the line you draw when the world asks for your attention and you answer, not before I have used it for what matters. It is the refusal to let your future be shaped by whatever is loudest, easiest, fastest, or most comfortable. And if you want a different life, this is where it begins. With the mind, with the hour, with the decision to stop being available to everything that weakens you. You will still feel the pull, you will still get tired, you will still be tempted, you will still hear the excuses. The goal is not to become untouched by distraction. The goal is to become the kind of person who can feel the pull and remain under command. That is mental sovereignty. That is self-respect. That is the war within. And no one can fight it for you. No one can protect your attention while you keep handing it away. No one can build your discipline while you keep voting for escape. No one can give you self-respect while you keep breaking promises in private. But you can begin again. Not tomorrow. Not when life gets easier. Not when the world slows down. No. One honest hour. One protected decision. One refusal to obey the weaker voice. One act of focus that proves you are still capable of command. Because the life you say you want is not waiting for more motivation. It is waiting for the version of you that can sit down, shut out the noise, face the discomfort, and do what must be done. Subscribe to the channel, and come back to strengthen your mind.